Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us to stay curious. Today, we're coming from our studios in downtown Titusville, Florida. And what's this behind me here? Is this New Mexico, Southwest America somewhere, maybe Arizona? Well, stay tuned and find out because this is a world that probably had life at one time. So, and of course, I'm talking about the planet Mars, and we're going to talk a little bit about Mars on the fourth anniversary of Perseverance landing on Mars, that big SUV-sized rover. We've got Curiosity is also on Mars for the past 13 years, and they've all but said that there was once life on Mars. And as you keep looking at this green screen, look at the layers of water that were taken to lay down this sedimentary rock feature in on the Jezero crater in Mars. It was basically a Mississippi-style river delta. But we're also going to talk about Pluto, and as February 18th is the anniversary of the discovery of Pluto by Clyde Tombaugh. This is February 17th, 2025. We're going to celebrate a little bit early. I have a guest tomorrow. Brian Bourget is a young entrepreneur doing a lot of Space Coast tourism publicity in the form of videos and press releases. He's got a little agency that does that. So we're going to have Brian on tomorrow. But we're going to have an interesting program. Stay tuned here as behind the Extreme Labs production facilities as Marty Winkle as always. Hi Marty, how you doing, my friend? Here on President's Day. President's Day used to be different when you and I were growing up. Hi Marty, tell us about President's Day way back in the last century.
Well, when I grew up, we had Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and then we had George Washington's birthday. We didn't have President's Day. That evolved over the years.
It evolved over the years, and as do a lot of national holidays. National holiday today. If you tried to go to the bank, you know that. These are our space age presidents, Marty. 13 presidents have been over NASA during its 60 some years. And of course, President Trump, currently in office, had two administrations. And But it's very interesting to see who do you see presidents that stood out for the American space program. And as you start at the top, you have President Kennedy and Johnson, and Nixon inherited all that and went to the shuttle. And then you're like going, President Ford, okay, President Carter, I'm not sure what. President Carter actually wanted more interplanetary, less people, more interplanetary robotic spacecraft. And I can't really disagree too much with that. And President Reagan, I think of Star Wars when you talk about President Reagan, as well as President Bush. They both flew top secret DoD missions on the space shuttle during their presidencies. And I have talked to several people involved with those, and they did make a difference. One astronaut told me we had some interesting assets aboard those DoD missions. And no coincidence that the Iron Curtain came down during those missions of the 1990s. Bill Clinton, he did attend a shuttle launch. Not sure what he was up to space-wise. Then the younger Bush, under him, we were going to the moon and Mars under the Constellation program. Oh, you all remember the Constellation program. And then President Obama canceled the Constellation program. And what did he do? He did something very good. He turned Kennedy Space Center and Cape Canaveral Spaceport into a user-friendly facility for businesses. Henceforth, we got the explosion of SpaceX and Blue Origin here on the Space Coast. It makes all the difference in the world. And President Biden going to the moon in Artemis. And President Trump, a big question mark on that. But President Trump's first administration is where the Artemis program was hatched. And there's a lot of people waiting to see what President Trump's going to do. He seems to be more involved in foreign affairs than interplanetary affairs. But so very interesting. Marty, how about that? Off the top of my head, something about each one of our great presidents there. Um, what have you got anything to add?
Nope, I can't think of anything right now.
No corrections. I didn't get anything messed up in the politics. That's rare for me there. Hate covering up President Reagan there, because his Star Wars thing was very interesting. And what was interesting about it, folks, that I have read about, and not my opinion, but I think I've read from a lot of reliable sources, as I'm trying to get our program up here. Um, he basically wanted to bankrupt Russia, okay, and create a smoke and mirrors that we were doing laser uh, weapons and stuff like that, and which we were doing some of that, but it was more to do something very expensive in military defense that no way could the Soviet Union or Russia pay for it. So that's what a lot was about there. So we're talking about happy birthday Pluto, and got sidelined with some good politics here about our space programs on President's Day. I want to say hi to Dean Babcock watching. Cliff Watson's watching already in Pomona, Australia. And you are a wonderful friend also, Cliff. Gary Gerald's up there in Georgia, getting busy for those Vidalia onions to be harvested here in a couple months. They're growing now, of course. Steve Jokums, greetings to you, my friend, from Lake County Spaceport. Maybe show you a picture tomorrow of some of the snow that Steve has been plowing up there at Fox Lake, Illinois. I don't miss that at all. Hello, Julie Clay. Thank you for joining our family. And hello, Carlton Bailey. Uh, he said that he's looking forward to a great show. Also here to advertise, he will have tables at the collectible show Saturday. Lots of goodies, cut rate prices. Okay, Carlton will have everything from some great books to maybe even some clothing apparel that you can buy. I'm wearing a Power to Go by Paul Callie exclusive T-shirt that we offered. Tom Celentano, he is heard you had some ice storms up there, Tom, in Connecticut area. So thank you all, part of our Stay Curious family that keeps growing. Tell your friends to like us, share us. Tell people that they're going to hear something today that you're not going to hear anywhere else on the entire YouTube universe. Think about that. Or go back to Friday, and you definitely won't hear Don Thomas, astronaut on 4 shuttle missions, tell you why he doesn't like space food, right, Marty? Don Thomas was a good interview that we had Friday. We just kind of pulled him in the studio and had a great conversation with him, and he will be at our Shuttle Fest in April, and he can't wait. Well, let's see what else I queued up here. Are you a space worker like Marty Winkle? If you are, why aren't you on the U.S. Space Worker Hall of Honor? And this is it's free. Sign up for it on our Facebook, or not our Facebook page, on our website. You go up to our website and you can fill out the form, talk about as much of your career as you want, put pictures. Jim Tully is over that, former mayor. He was a space worker for Lockheed Martin and United Space Alliance. A proud Navy man. Jim, this gives you an idea of how the page starts out. And if I was a space worker, I would do that. You're immortalizing yourself in a way, but you're leaving a biography that you want to write yourself about your space career and what you did as a proud American working in our space program. Project Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, of course, the shuttle program, International Space Station, and the uncrewed launches, the EELV launch vehicle program that encompasses all of you manned workers, uncrewed workers, including the next story that we're going to talk about here in a minute, and that is Vanguard being launched. There's Mr. Tully. He spends a lot of time on that on Tuesdays. Again, go to our website, americanspacemuseum.org, and you'll see U.S. Space Worker Hall of Honor. This is different than the Walk of Fame, where you give us $100 to put your name out of Spaceview Park. This is totally free, and a biography, an autobiography of yourself to share with family and friends. Space Memorabilia Show I alluded to is this Saturday. Carlton Bailey will be there, like I said. Free admission, free appraisals. If you wondered how much your collection's worth, or if you wondered if you do have a Neil Armstrong autograph, or Buzz Aldrin, or Gordon Cooper, we'll have the experts there to check it out for you and authenticate it for you. So 9 to 3. Beachside Hotel, great partners of ours. That is beside the Ron John's and another little hotel next to there, across from IHOP. You can't miss it, and we'll have signs out front there. So everything spacey will be sold, and you'll get some good deals too. Like from this guy, Dave Kalagi. This is Dave's jacket. Dave's going to have a table there. Apollo 11 TV recovery team, a patch I've never seen before and probably never will see again. Marty, look at the lunar module, how they've got the ascent stage popping off up there, heading back to the CM. But never saw this before, but Dave's got it, probably worth $200 or $300. The Apollo 12 USS Hornet recovery patch, those are rare to find. There's Dave. He loves coming just for the fellowship. Sell a few things. He'll probably buy more than he sells, Marty. I got you fixed up with the table there, Marty, for your Mylar. Are you in on that?
Yeah, I got some Mylar, got some silver coins, gold-plated coins, and a few other little things.
Good. That Mylar is off of Apollo 17, correct?
It's off of Apollo 12, LEM 7, and Apollo 17, LEM 12.
Well, now explain that, because you didn't go to the moon and bring him back.
No, we did some modifications on both vehicles, and we had on Apollo 17 on LEM 12, we had to remove the IMU, inertial measurement unit, and we had to cut away a lot of blanket to get to it, and it was being tossed out, so I untossed it and kept it.
Yeah, well, good for you. And they're worth $300 to $500 each. A good 4 by square inch piece of it, something like that, right, Marty? So, all right. Well, see if go ahead. Do you have something else to say, Marty?
Just gonna say the last auction when we had last week, I think the Apollo LEM Apollo 12 sold for, I think, $400, and Apollo 17 LEM 12 sold for about $500.
Yes, absolutely. He's got COAs with that, the little story behind it, which means so much. The provenance, the stories behind the memorabilia. This is what our American Space Museum is all about. We don't put anything in our collection for you to see that doesn't have the proof that it is what it says it is, not just a replica. We got a few replicas of things, but not many. But it's got a provenance, or someone owned it, or it was used for a specific mission at a specific time. So, Dave Kalagi, can't wait to see you on Saturday, my friend. Look at that, +3 Apollo 11, USS Hornet. That's another very rare patch. And look at what shapes that in. He probably have that jacket on. Maybe he'll let you buy it off his back there, Marty. Well, hope to see you Saturday. Come with your pockets full of money. You'll buy some good stuff. You might see some legends of NASA, like Mr. J. Honeycutt will probably show up. You never know. He may have an astronaut in tow, or his grandson Alex. You never know. So, all right. This date on space history, February 17th, kind of a very important date 60 years ago, and another one 60 some years ago. Uh, but Wanted to say that Robert Law chimed in from Dundee, Scotland, said Ronald Reagan gave the go ahead for the space station. He certainly did, just as Nixon gave the go ahead for the shuttle. And LBJ, of course, inherited the Apollo program and did a fine job, actually. And Dave Stangy's watching with his grandson Jack today. So, Jack, listen up, and you're going to learn some good space history today, particularly about one of the important spacecraft that crashed into the moon, as it was intended to. So this date in space history, give a wave there to Nicole Stott, as she's doing an EVA there for you. This is the Vanguard payload launched on a Vanguard rocket, okay, and it was the Vanguard 2 as a spacecraft. So this was the first spacecraft to study the magnetosphere of the Earth, the magnetic field around us. And the Vanguard, little sleek little thing there, and launched on this date 66 years ago on February 17th, 1959. All right. And it basically also was studying cloud cover on there. And it was a successful launch. There's a little payload there. But it operated for 18 days, but the satellite wobble degraded some of the data. All right. And the wobble was, they didn't have any thrusters on it to stabilize it. In fact, they would spin them up before launch to stabilize some of the satellites. So another early 1959 mission off pad 18A at Cape Canaveral. All right. This went up to 346 miles was the low point, but it went up as far as 1,900 miles. So an elliptical orbit to get into the magnetosphere and send back some data. And when the batteries ran out, that was all she wrote. So here's another launch. 60 years ago today, February 17th, 1965, from Launch Complex 12 at Cape Canaveral, is this Atlas rocket taking off with a Ranger spacecraft that was nothing more than a bunch of cameras that was going to try to figure out what did the surface of the moon look like up close. All right. Now it was going to smash into the moon at 5,000 miles an hour. And let's talk about that. Here is the Ranger spacecraft. Okay. It has the bus, they call it, with below was the camera gear. Had a radar dish on the back, you can just see a hint of, but it had solar panels. One of the first spacecraft to use solar panels to power it on its 3-day flight to the moon, launched on February 17th, 1965, and 3 days later, on February 20th, 65, it was in the vicinity of the moon, and for 23 minutes made a kamikaze final flight plan with the cameras wide open and TV receivers on Earth copying the data on like reel-to-reel tape back in the day. All right. The final impact was taken just a fraction of a second before impact. Now, this is one of the first pictures showing well-known areas of the moon there, Theophilus and Euclides. They're the big, but it crashed somewhere over in here, which is very near. It's in Mare Tranquility. All right. And they crashed it on purpose, of course. That was, we couldn't soft land yet. We didn't have that capability. But this kamikaze spacecraft was part of a Ranger program that started out with 6 failures. Ranger 1 through 6 did not work right. Ranger 1 missed the moon completely. Several of them they lost communications with. I think one didn't even make it to orbit. And so then another one, everything went fine, but the cameras didn't turn on. So it crashed and didn't send back any pictures. And this was in 1963 and 64. So the Congress, and these were important to show us, right? We're going to the moon. We have Gemini spacecraft ready to train in space in 65, and the Apollo program right behind it. So Congress was really upset. They called the NASA leaders, management, to Congress to investigate their problems. Um, and they actually had to reorganize a couple of the agencies. All right. And at one point, the program was called Shoot and Hope. And back in the 1960s, they'd wasted like $100 million, equivalent to about $1 billion in today's money. So this was some serious money that was with no six failures. Ranger 7 did successfully return images in 1964 in July. And then Ranger 8 was this one that was launched today, and Ranger 9 was the final one. So a $1.2 billion project that was saved by the last three missions. Here's where you look at the big old full moon there. The red circle is where the impact of the Ranger 8 was. The dots are actually other places we've landed. That's Apollo 16, for example. All right. But that is very close to where Apollo 11 landed. All right. And we actually got our first close-up views of what the surface of the moon looked like. And right down to the last square foot, there was tiny craters everywhere, shown in here. The X's are registration marks on the film, so they can gauge distances by using some geometry and trigonometry there. Just a few moments before impact, the largest craters up here at the upper left might be a foot across, something like that. So what I think is fun is going back and looking. Well, let's just talk a little 1 second about the results over 6 Videocon cameras snapped photos all the way to impact, 1 wide angle, 1 narrow, and then 4 were like what we call a 50 millimeter lens. 7,137 photos were taken. All right, from about 1,000 miles above the surface to its final impact when it was about 5 feet above in there. And so the landing site became very close to where we chose for Apollo 11. So very interesting program there. Very important to the Apollo program was the Ranger program. So then decades later, like 4 decades later, in 2020s, we're orbiting the moon with Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and its powerful cameras. And we knew where it had impacted, Ranger 8. So here is the impact area where it impacted. A big splat out, a new crater formed there. You see the fresh material that's been ejected is white and lighter color. That's important to analyzing this and comparing that to the photos taken by the Apollo orbiting command modules, as well as the astronauts there. I've looked all over to see what the diameter of that crater is, and I suspect it's got to be something like 50 feet, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Go ahead, Marty.
Okay, if you're estimating that, Mark, I was just curious, you have any idea how far, I'll call it the splash zone was? How far did the debris travel?
Exactly, yes. I did try to find some data for that and could not, but it's easy to analyze because the size of these craters and so forth are known. I'd say that the debris is thrown out. That could be a mile at least. Those rays there, you see the impact came from the right and impacted and threw stuff out ahead of it and beside it there. But there's a closer picture of it. Look at that. Look at that impact there. Look at the big rock boulder on the left that was rolled away. Okay. No, actually, wait a sec. That's I'll have to check that. That's very suspicious of the Apollo 11 landing site there. Okay. And if I think this is the Apollo 11 landing site because you see the crater that Neil walked over to. All right. And then there's the impact crater of the uh, uh, 5,000 miles an hour hitting there. So that's huge. And I'm going to double check that, but that says that that is the Ranger 8 impact crater. Uh, and Michael Bruno's confirming there, yep, about 6,000 miles an hour it hit, created this crater. And I know it's about 20 miles away to the Apollo 11 landing site. So that's amazing if those are both in there. Hello, Jessica, and my granddaughter Bob and Macy. Hope you're all behaving and enjoying a little about the moon. You're going to hear about Pluto here in a bit. Thank you, Tommy Usiak. He said he'll watch the whole show tonight. There'll be a quiz at 11, so you better be watching the whole thing there, Tom. Hope you're staying warm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Marty, oh, so many things have hit the moon on purpose. A lot of them, the third stage of the Apollo rockets, that once they sent the they had sent the lunar module and command module on the way to the moon, and the command module got the lunar module out of the slaw. Then they would fire up the engine and bypass the astronauts going to the moon and crash it somewhere so that they could hear the sound of the interior of the moon on the seismographs that they planted there on previous missions. Here you see Ranger 6, like I said, hit the moon but didn't take pictures. There's Ranger 7, 8, and 9. All right, made big impacts. That's a 6,000 mile an hour impact. It's something that is definitely, just say the size of your car. All right, with some antenna hanging off of it and solar panels and stuff like that. So they make a powerful crater there. All right, look at those Apollo Saturn stages there. Now, not sure why 16 didn't hit the moon, but Grail A and B, that's kind of hard to see on the bottom. They're showing you before and after there. And these were also small satellites that orbited the moon, checking out the gravity mass concentrations there. So thought you'd be interested in a little bit of history 60 years ago, as this was huge. Waiting for these pictures, Marty. I remember as a teenager wanting to see in the newspaper, what did this look like? Oh, we knew it was going to impact. So you got to wait till the next day to see pictures. But I'm sure Walter Cronkite may have had some on there, or ABC or NBC News for a few minutes talking about it. But then that was briefly gone. You really couldn't take a picture of it to look at it like you could today with your smartphone. So it was just mesmerizing, and such a excitement to understand what were they going to find on these close-up pictures. And what they found was a rough terrain, right down to the last foot. And this is why we've got to have pads on these landers, legs that stick way out there so things don't topple over like the last two uncrewed spacecraft did at the South Pole last year. Well, let's talk a little bit about the birthday of Pluto, discovered by Clyde Tombaugh on February 18th, 1930. Let me back up here, 1930, okay, and is when he officially found it, 95 years ago, okay. And they're having a Pluto festival in Flagstaff, Arizona, where Clyde Tombaugh worked and took pictures of Pluto. And I'm going to explain how this happened 90 years ago at an observatory called the Lowell Observatory by an eccentric amateur astronomer named Percival Lowell, who 100 years ago, you would have known Percival Lowell just as sure as you would have known Carl Sagan today, or Stephen Hawking in the 90s, or Bill Nye the Science Guy, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, all popularizers of astronomy and space in their certain era. Well, Percival Lowell was one of those people. he wrote books about Mars, and Mars is the abode for life. Believed that Mars um, uh, was inhabited, and canals of water were all over it. So this is the legacy of Percival Lowell, who was determined to find a planet X based on the perturbations of the orbit of Neptune. Neptune wasn't where it was supposed to be all the time. And the only thing that could make that happen is something beyond Pluto that we never seen before. So he made some calculations and predicted that there'd be a planet X, and it would be discovered in the constellation Gemini, I think. And he hired Clyde Tombaugh to find it. And after years of effort, Pluto was found. But we'll talk a little more about that when I show some pictures up there. Wanted to say hi to Mitch Rothman. He's in Colorado. I owe you a phone call, my friend. You'll get it tonight. Cliff Watson, he agrees that lakes should be more wider on the landers to make it upright. That's right. And my daughter Jessie there, Jamon, and Macy and McKinley, my granddaughters, she says I have a photo and an autograph from Clyde Tombaugh. And you know I'm going to show that photograph, Jessie. Yes, the Lowell Observatory is a must-see, Dean Babcock says. I saw it like 50 years ago, and it's changed a lot. But Clyde Tombaugh was actually buried there. It's way up at Flagstaff, Arizona, near the meteor crater. So, growing up, again, I love to wax nostalgia about some space history because it is my DNA. It is my fiber. And I remember, all right, baby boomers, remember Weekly Reader? Sure, you remember the Weekly Reader. Marty, don't know if you did. Weekly Reader was a little newspaper that you would get in the mail, okay, during the summertime particularly. Remember that? You bought it for your kids, I know.
I remember that in grade school, and it was given to us in class.
Mm-hmm. It was. And then summertime, you would pay like, it was given to us in class. And then summertime, you pay like $2 and it was mailed to you. It was the biggest deal in the world to get the Weekly Reader in your mailbox when you were 12 years old. 60 cents. I bought this book, The Search for Planet X. You could buy books in the Weekly Reader. And I remember buying this book, and then decades later, I met Clyde Tombaugh and got him to sign this book. The connection of Mars, Pluto, and Percival Lowell is a big story in the astronomy annuals. When you're an amateur astronomer, you get fascinated with this man, Lowell. He was a character, a blue blood from Boston, meaning very wealthy. His sister was Amy Lowell, renowned poet laureate. And he said Mars was inhabited in 1907. And this was the heyday of his books I'm going to show you here in a second. We'll see a picture of the guy here in just a minute. Yeah, I don't have a picture of Lowell there yet. We'll get to him as we get to Clyde Tombaugh. But so he built this observatory because he loved astronomy, and Arizona was a clear area for skies and so forth. And he had one of the best observatories in the world, private observatory, big 24-inch refractor, the kind of telescope like this. Instead of 3 inches across, it's 24 across. The biggest is up in Yerkes at 40. So these are really classical for seeing planets. Refractors are good. So he was promoting Mars Inhabited. The New York Times wrote it, in answer to a request from the editor of Nature for an authoritative statement of the observation of Mars made during the 1907 observation. Professor Percival Lowell said 2 or 3 areas are the most important results where he thinks life is living on Mars. Now, we are having a Mars opposition right now, and it's the big red star. You go out after sunset. Venus is the bright star in the west. Directly overhead, the bright star is Jupiter, and the real red star in the west is Mars. And there's 2 stars to the left of it. That's Castor and Pollux and Gemini, the twins. So Mars is up there now. It's fairly close to Earth. You can see some detail on it, but it's not a very close opposition. It's still 50 million miles away. When it gets within the 35 million mile way, then you can see the polar caps very easily. Well, here's the discovery of Pluto, made on plates that he confirmed on February 18th. He knew he had found Pluto, that being Clyde Tombaugh. The arrow points to a faint star, and that faint star has moved to the other position of the arrow. See these two right there? That star and that star? Pluto's right beside it. Whereas on the other slide, go find these two stars right in the middle, and you see where Pluto's moved. Look how faint it is. But what you would take pictures of the sky on the left was taken. This is the movement in 6 days. Okay. But an easier way to do it is take pictures 6 months apart and then compare them on a blink comparator. You are on the other side of the solar system in July than you are in February. You're on exact opposite sides. You take a picture when you can, and sometimes you have to fudge a little bit because the objects are in the daytime. So you have to wait till they're visible. But this is how you do it. It's called a blink, where you're actually looking through a microscope at the not the film you took, but photographic plates on glass. All right, these were glass photographic plates, which is smearing the film. That here's my demonstration of film. All right, this is your silver halide crystals on plastic here in a 35 millimeter reel. Well, you got a 4x5 piece of glass that's got this coating on it, and that's sensitive to light, and that's your film. So it was discovered. They found it. All right. A 9th planet greater than Earth found. All right. This was announced on March 14th, 1930, though Clyde Tombaugh confirmed it the 18th of February. Look what they're saying about this in the New York Times. New discovery bears out calculations of Lowell and is the most important since that of Neptune. Savants think it may be bigger than Jupiter. So you've got mind readers, savants, people, or smart, intelligent people think it's bigger than Jupiter. It wasn't. It's not even as big as the smallest Galilean moon, Io, of Jupiter. Orb sighted January 1st by delicate lens. Observatory at Flagstaff, a delicate lens. I like that in there. So this was huge in 1930. Okay, this was like the coming out of the Roaring '20s and a lot of industrialization coming on. Of course, it's a few years before the Great Depression when all the rug got pulled out from everything. But this was a part of the scientific renaissance going on, with great minds like Einstein making his impact a decade before that, and so forth. And here's the man, Percival Lowell, Clyde Tombaugh, excuse me. There he is, looking through the telescope at the Lowell Observatory, picture posed, of course, after he became famous. That's 1931. He lived most of his life in New Mexico, grew up in Illinois. There he is in 1928 with the telescope he built. Very familiar to me. I built a similar telescope and was turned on by astronomy and telescopes because of Clyde Tombaugh and reading that weekly reader story and getting that book. I was very, very influenced by him. There is Pluto, found in 2015 by the New Horizons spacecraft. When it flew by Pluto, it had ashes of Clyde Tombaugh on board it. And this little heart feature of Pluto is called the Tombaugh Planitia, the Tombaugh Lake. And Pluto, though demoted to a dwarf planet, is the largest object in the Kuiper Belt. So, though Clyde Tombaugh might not like the dwarf planet status of Pluto, he will understand it's well deserved because he discovered the Kuiper Belt, where there's thousands of objects, at least hundreds like Pluto, that are super cold, almost 400 below zero. Nitrogen is what we're looking at, frozen like a slushy. It's not even hard like ice. Most of these features here are very pliable and weak. And what you notice the absence of, Marty, are craters. You don't see many craters, particularly in this lake area here. Therefore, that tells astronomers and planetary scientists that this is a fresh surface. This surface is less than 100 million years old, probably. Something is rejuvenating and replenishing this surface in a way that we don't understand 4 billion miles away from the sun, where the sunlight is so weak, the sun looks about as bright as Venus is in the sky right now. You go look at Venus tonight, fourth magnitude. If you were looking at the sun from Pluto, it would not look as bright as Venus does. Think about that. Venus is 20 million miles away from Earth at the closest, but it's about 40 right now, getting closer. So look at all these features. Pluto is one of the most interesting planets or objects in the solar system. It will always be a planet in my mind because I met the man, Clyde Tombaugh. Here he is. Let's see. There he is in like 1990, probably around 1992, 93 in there. Yep, that's me with the tie and black hair and all that good stuff there. I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lucky to have 5 people alive in that picture, probably. There, my buddy Mike Chessman's holding the poster that Clyde signed. He's wearing our Bays Mountain Astronomy hat there. And his famous bolo, and there's Dr. Ed Burke, one of my mentors in astronomy, and this is in Bristol, Tennessee at King College, now called King University, where Dr. Burke taught astronomy. I took a few classes off of him for fun. And he and Clyde were pretty good buddies. Dr. Burke would take out to New Mexico 3 or 4 of his students every year to study under the skies on Clyde's ranch out there. Marty, you got a question there as I'm waxing nostalgic here.
Yeah, Dean Babcock is asking, what is the orange area at the North Pole of the planet?
Dean, I am glad you asked that. There's Clyde in later years there. Okay. What that is, we think, is, wait. I don't have. Charon is its moon. And Charon is 1/4 the size of Pluto. Now, Pluto is about this is size of Earth's moon. Okay, it's a little bit smaller than Earth's moon, 2,000 miles across. And Charon is about 800 miles across. So they're like the Earth and the moon. They're 1/4, 1-to-4 ratio. And if I showed you a picture of Charon, it has some debris that's this color on it. They think that the two are exchanging material. All right, but we don't know for sure. But we think this may come from ice volcanoes on Charon that may be pulled by the gravity of Pluto and transferring material to the top there. But yes, look at that gorgeous orangish something on there. Again, the absence of craters where you have a big crater and some over here. These are mountains. These mountains are floating on a slush of nitrogen. And this is all minus like 380 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's also 4 billion miles away. So the light is so dim that this was an incredible scientific achievement by New Horizons to even take this picture as it's going like 30,000 miles an hour past Pluto. So we'll talk more about Pluto, I think, over this week, as it is Pluto's birthday. And you mentioned that, Dean. So I'll show you some demonstrations of that and things that we've learned of 10 things you should know about Pluto that it is actually more dynamic than Mars in many ways, and a lot less boring than Venus, whose surface is 900 degrees and may have volcanoes on it. There's Mr. Tombaugh, died at age 90 in 1997. All right, and I was happy I got to meet him, and I got to tell him, you influenced me a lifetime of amateur astronomy, and he was an amateur astronomer to the end. Loved, like me, looking visually through telescopes. It's actually becoming a very lost art. I was known in my day for having a very good visual acuity, sketching the moon and Mars, and never did see canals of Mars, but I can explain to you a little bit about what they might be. So, and Michael Bruno says they thought they saw canals for some reason, and that is a reason, is that it could have been an optical illusion. And also, before we leave Pluto here, Steve Joachim says SP is Earth from the distance of Pluto. Okay. And Mark Warabets, Team Pluto here. He likes the Weekly Reader reference too. Mark, thank you for joining our Stay Curious family here. Got a lot of intelligent people there, so we're glad that you joined us here. He's the New Jersey chapter. Yeah, why Pluto? They just couldn't keep it a planet and then grandfather it in for the sake of it's the largest object in the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt are somewhat between a planet and an asteroid and a comet. All right. If Pluto got closer to the sun, would it emit a tail like a debris start coming off of it at 200 below zero? That's a big change. 300 degrees almost. It might act like a comet. So glad y'all are enjoying this. I think you're going to enjoy a little bit of look at Mr. Percival Lowell here. I don't even need any notes on Percival Lowell or Clyde Tombaugh. I've talked about them so much. And as a youth, I was fascinated with Mars until Mariner 4 in 1995 went by Mars over areas where there were supposed to be canals and there were nothing but craters. And that shattered our belief in that Mars was an abode for life. But there's Percival Lowell, an aristocrat, wealth in Boston. I think Dad was a lawyer, merchant. Trading was a big deal, of course, in the Boston area. This gentleman was very smart. Marty, he became the first ambassador to Korea in the 1880s, something like that. Now, who would have been president in 1890? I think that's when he was the ambassador to Korea, and he actually wrote the Korean Constitution, I think, and their declaration of civil laws and so forth. So very influential man in many ways, but he loved astronomy, loved looking through telescopes, and he heard of a man named Schiaparelli, an Italian astronomer, who had said he saw lines on Mars like these you see here that he thought were canali, C-A-N-A-L-I, which translates in Italy to like ditch features or lines. Over here, canals are waterways, and immediately Lowell got intrigued with that, created his own observatory and so forth, like we talked about, and promoted for decades in the American press and the most popular books of the time that Mars was had creatures on it. Now, this is the 1900s, okay, 120 years ago. And Marty, most all astronomers thought that there was life on all the planets. It was sort of like reverse now. We're trying to figure out, it's so hard to say that there's life on Mars. And I guarantee you there are roly-polies in caves underneath Mars, 2 miles underneath. There's got to be some sort of life in those caverns and caves. And I'm talking about insect life or microbial life type of things. But back 120 years ago, all astronomers just says, yeah, there probably is life everywhere, on the moon. Even the great astronomer William Herschel, the 1800s, thought that the sun was inhabited by creatures in some way that would tolerate the heat. Thank you, by the way, Cliffy. There's my mug there, Cliff. Um, all right, thank you. ARS, the Australian Research and Space Exploration. Thank you very much. Cliff's down there in Pomona, Australia, and I'm having a delicious cup of coffee. So, Marty, who was the president when about the 1890s or so?
Benjamin Harrison.
Benjamin Harrison. So he may have been the president that sent Lowell over to Korea to be the ambassador there. This is a famous picture of Percival Lowell. So if you see this picture, that's Lowell looking through his great telescope. Of course, it's a stage shot. But yeah, you'd sit in a chair. The chair was elevated, okay, by a motor, a platform that you go up and down with the telescope. I enjoyed sitting myself looking through a telescope and have made my own map of Mars doing that. And he's got a knob on a fine tuning thing there. But that's a very famous picture of Lowell in the observatory. But here's his 4 books he wrote. The first one was in like 1898, I think, Mars, then Mars and its canals, and let's say 1900, and Mars is the abode of life, and then the evolution of worlds. And these were bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers, just like Steve Hawking's A Brief History of Time, the great astrophysicist book that many of you have on your shelves but probably never read. Well, I've actually read these books of Lowell's, though I remember growing up in Ohio, I had to have my Findlay, Ohio library get it from the Columbus, Ohio State University. Mars is the abode of life. And I got to sign my name away at like age 16 to read it, because this was for a science project I did on the canals, all right? And what I did before July, had been 1964 then. And this is very interesting, Marty. To try to disprove the canals, okay, I kind of proved in my mind what they may have been. And here's Lowell's Canals, 1895. All right, quite a network where the dark areas are like continents, the light areas are deserts, and the canals are taking water for the Martians on there. Well, I put up a map of Mars on a poster board, Marty, and I something like this, let's say. It was probably more like this than my next slide. Oh, there is Mars. There ain't no canals on Mars. Mars is so dry, so cold. It's like Antarctica, and so it's a low humidity that water can't exist on the surface. But this is Mars from the Perseverance rover. So here's an area on Mars that Lowell drew on the left on his globe, and here it is, a photograph taken by an amateur astronomer, actually. See, this is called Sinus Abuus. The triangle is called Syrtis Major. Hellas is the lowest area on Mars, and that is a polar cap that I can see tonight from my backyard telescope, just an 8-inch reflector. So I drew this, Marty, on the left on a poster board. And I know I had to erase some things once in a while and stuff like that. And so I put this like 30 feet away up on the wall. And I had my classmates, like all 30 of them, make a drawing of what they saw. Teacher let me do this. And when I got the papers back, some of them didn't do it, and some of them did beautiful. And there were some of them that had lines drawn, like these on the bottom here, in between some of the objects there. And I'm going, well, I don't see those lines on there. And when I looked at the lines where they drew, they were the eraser marks. And the angle that they were seeing the paper from, the eraser marks showed like a shadow that they wrote down that they drew as canals. So that got me thinking in 8th grade that the canals were optical illusions. And that was part of my science project, based on my error of erasing on my demonstrating map of Mars, that those erasures become canals from the angle people were looking at them. So Definitely no canals on Mars. Definitely not a place to take your kids, as the Elton John song says, because it's cold, cold, cold. Yet we have taken vehicles to Mars. Mars is inhabited, Marty. Mars is inhabited by robots. Go ahead, Marty. On that.
I just have to mention this, Mark. Jesse wrote a comment. You're Jesse. There's a special spot in my dad's heart for Pluto, Mars, and me.
Oh, that's
So that
cute.
was nice.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for reading that, Marty. Um, Everyone needs to like. It helps the museum on YouTube. That's right. Thank you. There's Steve Jokums. And subscribe to us there. In the Martian Chronicles miniseries, they actually dramatize the canals. I read the Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, but I don't know about the miniseries there, Michael. But thank you for chiming in on that. And Carlton Bailey said, everybody keeps looking for carbon-based life. And we know, and we might be looking at life and not even know it if it's based on some other mineral or gas or something we're not familiar with. Exactly. Silicone-based life is something that's thought about, particularly with the rivers of methane flowing on Titan that we know happens. So exactly, you go take a knife, put it underneath these layers. Look at that. You can't even count the number of layers, Marty, of the sediment laid down and then dried up and then laid down and then dried up, stack to stack. Is that a million years, 100 million years that I'm looking at behind me there? But maybe you pull some of that away, and behind there is some little cockroaches that are going to go scurry away down a little tunnel because they're living beneath the ground in there. I say that's what's going on Mars there. So hope you enjoyed this flashback. Pluto, by the way, its initials PL are like Percival Lowell. All right. And here's a backyard, another view of Mars taken by a Italian amateur astronomer last week. Over a series of just you can see how Mars is moving in the space of 3 hours. Okay, see that feature right there, Marty? That's actually Olympus Mons, the 17-mile high volcano on Mars, poking up in the morning uh, mist there. And these are the type of things that amateurs in their own backyards are doing now with Mars. It's just incredible. And I've not jumped on that bandwagon, as it's about a $5,000 camera and a good $5,000 telescope. And then you got to have you don't want to just keep pulling it in and out of the garage. You'd like to have an observatory. So, but I enjoyed looking at Mars, and I saw these features, dark areas on Mars, and the polar cap there. And of course, we're getting our close-ups of Mars from Curiosity and Perseverance. Here's Perseverance celebrating its 4th year on the Mars Jezero crater. It landed February 18th, 2021. Searching for life on Mars and collecting dozens of examples. Look at the striated layer behind there. Okay, again, this is a selfie that these rovers take of each other by taking their long camera arm out, and like you would take a selfie of yourself. But in 3 years, this is a selfie taken a couple weeks ago. Look at how the Martian dust has settled on it, and that was a problem because the dust settled on the rover's Opportunity and Spirit on their solar panels, but dust devils blew them off, unbeknownst to us would that happen. So these rovers are planned to last about 10 years. Curiosity's in its 13th year, and Perseverance is in its 4th year. Major achievements: this rover created oxygen out of carbon dioxide. It developed a flight of a miniature helicopter called Ingenuity. Here it is in its white room being checked out to give you an idea of the size of these rovers. There it is in the clean room, looking pristine. Here it is on Mars. Okay. A real trooper. All right. Here's an artist's rendering of Ingenuity, which was a $80 million mission that was supposed to fly 5 missions. It flew 72 missions, outperformed everything. But more importantly, those 72 missions gave us an unbelievable database of how to create helicopters on Mars. This is going to be the way to move humans around Mars, move scientific payloads around Mars. This is what we're going to do big time. Though Mars's atmosphere is so thin, the rotors were going so fast and were made just right that they could pick this little rover up. It was only the size of this coffee mug from the Australian Research Astronomy Institute there. But it worked, and it was a game changer. Also, Marty, this rover took to Mars the first microphones on another world taken to Mars, all right? I think that's cool. And they listen to the wind blowing all the time on Mars. And you can download that on there. So hope that you've enjoyed today's little bit of space history, a lot of Pluto and Mars history, and a lot of good friends watching today on Stay Curious, including Gary Gerald and Steve Jokums, as we look at these canyons of Mars. Cliff Watson down in Australia, Dean Babcock, he's in Illinois, Carlton Bailey's just a few miles here from us. Julie Clay, thank you for watching. And we have found a lot of clay on Mars, which you can't make clay without water, Julie. So we know that the clay that we found on Mars, of course, isn't pliable anymore, but it is the stuff that we want to find searching for life. Robert Law up in Dundee, Scotland. Hope you're enjoying your evening. Tom Celentano, Dave Stangy, and Jack are watching. Hey, Jack. Now you know a lot about Pluto, buddy. Tommy Usiak, Jesse, my daughter with the girls, McKinley and Macy. Michael Bruno, thank you, Michael. Mitch Rothman is Man Space. And Elena Adhekara. Elena, thank you for chiming in today. Mark Warabetz and Ronald Lopez, thank you for joining our Stay Curious family. And Ronald Lopez is here on Earth, he wanted to let everybody know. So glad you are, Ronald. As we look at a sunset on Mars over the mountains of Jezero Crater there. There's our sun in a bluish cast sky caused by all of the dust in the air there on Mars. So hope that you've all enjoyed today. Thank you so much. And thumbs up to all you out there for staying curious with me today. We'll have a very fun conversation tomorrow with a friend of mine on board. We're on the Titusville area Visitors Council together. Brian Bourget, I think how you pronounce his last name, but I know him as Brian, and he's one of the influencers here with his public relations business, and we're going to talk a little bit about some Cape Canaveral and Pad 39 pictures he took, as well as talk about what's it like to promote the Space Coast here with all that's going on. You're going to enjoy that. So thank you very much. Another week kicked off of Stay Curious, and I'm glad that you were aboard to help get it going today. So tell your friends to like us, share us, and go Stay Curious. Look at some of the great past shows we have. There's over 900 of them on there. And you'll enjoy Don Thomas if you go look that one up from Friday on there. So Marty, thank you very much. He's got some family business to take care of tomorrow, so he's going to do it remotely with me. Thank you for doing that, Marty. Anything over there we need to button up, sir?
It was just another newcomer, Olive Juice.
Another what?
Another new person watching, or we start chatting. Her name is Olive Juice.
Olive Juice. Thank you, Olive and Julie, and all of you watching, Ronald, Mark, and Elena. Glad to have you on board. Keep coming back. You won't be disappointed. You'll always learn something, but we'll always have a little bit of fun along the way. Because I'm Mark Marquette, and I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.